Hi
Hi
guys,
guys,
welcome back again to the channel and let's get right into today's reaction.
In 1812, the young nation of the United States took on the country with the
hold on.
most
The young nation of United.
Wait, do you guys notice something?
Yeah, United Kingdom. United Kingdom.
And
Oh, United Kingdom, United States.
What is it that you notice? I still want to get what you guys notice.
the Canadas were together with the UK.
The United Kingdom and the UK are in the same.
Oh,
Geographically, they are not in the same. Will I use the word hemisphere? Hemisphere is kind of like no. I'll say the same continent.
Yeah.
oh wow.
Check the current map. They are not together.
But why is the Canada with
How we
the
can
UK?
land separate with time? What is the
Okay. Yeah, the Titanic.
Prince should know that.
Yeah.
Geophysicist.
But I feel like with time, land do she's
Yes, the Titanic plate. Yeah, it moves.
moving.
Oh
Wow.
wow.
powerful navy in the world in a war that would affect more than just the former colonies and their colonizer. The United States of America first gained freedom from the British in an 8-year-long Revolutionary War that finally came to a close when Britain inevitably recognized the independence of their 13 former colonies on September 3rd, 1783. One of the most relevant impacts of this war that would fuel future tensions between the US and Britain once again was the role of the Native Americans.
Oh
And
wow.
as a fan of our channel, you should check out our friends over at CuriosityStream. This is my personal favorite streaming service, a place where I can watch thousands of incredibly well-made documentaries and learn more about different topic of today's video, the War of 1812. By watching it, you will learn more about the impressive history of the United States and the United Kingdom, the rivalry between both nations, and the details of the war, also named the Second American War of Independence. This war was very important because it could have changed history as we know it. Because you are our subscriber, we have a special offer for you. If you sign up between November 16th and January 3rd, you can get 25% off a yearly subscription. That's unlimited access for only $14.99 a year. So use the code KNOWLEDGEA when you sign up and get 25% off your yearly subscription.
Look at those rifles.
During the Revolution, the Native Americans mostly supported the Brits, who they hoped would continue to restrict expansion from the US settlers into Native American territory. When Britain failed to maintain its rule over the colonies, the United States eventually accelerated its takeover of native land, causing even more friction between the American societies. This friction only grew stronger as the years went on, as Britain remained a driving force of the discord, since not only had the natives taken its side in the Revolution, but the British also openly encouraged the Native Americans to fight back against their antagonists. By 1812, this, combined with a few other factors, led to the development of a new war. While the United States was clearly unhappy with the united opposition from Britain and the natives, they were also infuriated by allegations that the Royal Navy was utilizing a tactic known as impressment to take US men for their own troops. On top of this, the ongoing strife between Britain and France had a notable impact on the United States. Heavily locked in their own struggle, the warring nations tried to restrict trade from neutral countries and punish anyone who attempted to ignore the constraints. This put the United States in a detrimental position due to their inability to continue trade with either nation unless they wanted to risk invoking the wrath of the other side. While France took a more laid-back approach to ensure the US abstained from doing business with the British, the latter was more aggressive about the matter. On January 7th, 1807, Britain issued an order in council stating, "It is hereby ordered that no vessel shall be permitted to trade from one port to another, both which ports shall belong to or be in the possession of France or her allies, or shall be so far under their control as the British vessels may not freely trade. Furthermore, any ships that refused to obey these restrictions would be subject to seizure by the Royal Navy, cargo and all." By November, the original order was expanded, now to include all the ports and places of France and her allies, or of any other country at war with His Majesty Majesty and all other ports or places in Europe from which, although not at war with His Majesty, the British flag is excluded, and all ports or places in the colonies belonging to His Majesty's enemies. In retaliation, France, under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte, issued the Milan Decree, which said that every ship, to whatever nation it may belong, that shall have submitted to be searched by an English ship or to a voyage to England, or shall have paid any tax whatsoever to the English government, is thereby, and for that alone, declared to be denationalized, to have forfeited the protection of its king, and to have become English property. Adding on, Napoleon declared that any of the aforementioned ships that enter French ports or those of French allies are good and lawful prizes of his nation. Forced to reply, U.S. President Thomas Jefferson signed the Embargo Act in December of 1807, blocking all international trade from American ports and taking direct aim at Britain. Unfortunately for America, the act backfired and turned the U.S. into more of a victim than anyone else. Emphasizing this point, the Minister to France himself even said, "Here it is not felt, and in England it is forgotten." The effects of the Embargo Act ultimately pushed the US into an economic depression, and it had to be repealed less than 2 years after the initial signature. In its place, the Non-Intercourse Act was passed, which directly forbade trade with Britain and France and their colonies. When this new act still proved to be ineffective, the United States tried once again, this time passing Macon's Bill No. 2 in May of 1810. This bill lifted trading bans and stated that if either France or Britain removed their own restrictions, the US would re-establish an embargo with the opposing nation. By August, Napoleon enacted a plan to exacerbate tension between Britain and the United States, and it ultimately worked. He first told the new president, James Madison, that he intended to exempt the US from his previously established Berlin and Milan decrees, promoting Madison to bring back the Non-Intercourse Act constraints against Britain in November of that year. Despite the fact that Napoleon never actually followed through on his proclamation, Britain and the United States were now on the brink of all-out war. The final straw came when the Battle of Tippecanoe unfolded in late 1811, as the US troops claimed victory over the Native Americans, wishing to stop further expansion once again. Given the United States was fairly confident in the belief that the British were supplying the natives with weapons from Canada, a faction of the US Republican Party known as the Warhawks began a heavy push towards an official declaration of war. At last, on June 18, 1812, President James Madison signed the declaration against Britain, despite contention about the issue coming from both the House and Senate. Another problem emerged as well when Britain decided to suddenly repeal their trade restrictions before news of the US declaration of war actually reached the British over a month later. Aware of this delay, Britain decided not to immediately respond to the call of war and waited to see how the Americans would react to their repeals. When the US got wind of this surprising development, they were, in turn, unsure of how the Brits would react to their declaration of war. Ultimately, the United States decided to follow through on its proclamation and did so by invading Canada, which was a British colony at the time. While the American troops hoped to capture Canadian land to force Britain into negotiation, they had no such success. No one was prepared for war. The British and French have been busy fighting their own battles, and the US military was grossly ill-suited to take on the likes of Britain. The defeats were plenty and humiliating for the Americans. One excessively humbling loss for the US happened when General William Hull surrendered Fort Detroit on August 16, 1812, and his own army to the British troops, and allowed Michigan territory to be deemed as part of Britain. Chased across the Canadian border, as Hull saw the size of his opponent's forces, which was a mix of British and Native American troops, and knowing that his daughter and grandchild were in the fort, he decided to give up without a single shot being fired. Hull's disgraceful failure led to an uptick in Native American raids in the Northwest and British conflict under the command of Major General Henry Proctor. Adding insult to injury, U.S. Brigadier General Henry Dearborn struggled to make any progress on the northeastern border because the militias in New England were not supportive of the war and uninterested in coming together for an attack on Montreal. By October, the Americans were finally able to get some momentum as Major General Stephen von Rensselaer led an army of 3,100 militiamen into the Battle of Queenston Heights. Rensselaer sent some advanced units across the river where they were able to hold their ground for some time on a slope just above Queenston and were successful until they were overcome by British forces as the rest of the American troops refused to join the fight. 925 U.S. soldiers were then captured by the British, despite Major General Isaac Brock on the British side being killed during the battle. Yet again, the Americans took another hit in 1813 when an attempt to retake Detroit resulted in a massacre of U.S. prisoners by their Native American opponents. On top of that, Brigadier General Henry Dearborn was replaced by Major General James Wilkins. At long last, though, in September of 1813, U.S. Commodore Oliver Hazard...
Sorry, one of the things that are still very surprising for me is the fact that the US and the UK warred each other.
Yeah, I've never seen
I've
that.
never heard that. This is the first time.
I think that's the main reason the whole reaction is quiet, because this is like we are
It's
learning.
a shocking
It's new.
fact. I've never heard of this. But I think we might have, but not in details.
Yeah,
There's the Spangled Banner.
But I just felt like it was just colonized, dragged to live. I didn't know like different versions and different Yeah, and the Red Indians as well, the Native Americans.
I only thought the people that the US ever fought was the Native Americans. That's the...
Wow.
Perry scored a major naval victory at Lake Erie against the forces of British Captain Robert Barclay and opened the gates for more success on the American side. When the Battle of the Thames erupted the following month, the U.S. finally defeated the British and Native American allied forces. The next spring season, at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, a U.S. militia force faced off with a Native American force known as the Red Sticks and found victory once again, demanding that the losing side cede roughly 23 million acres of land, which would later become Alabama and span partially into Georgia. Another win for the United States followed in the summer, July of 1814, at the Battle of Chippewa, but it was short.
Initially, they said with some of this history we've had, not actually from school or anything, they said the Americans, they actually just came to American, like they just came and they started occupying the land from the native. The Native Americans are actually the original owner of the land. So I think they just came.
What I want to ask is, what is the difference between the Native American?
I think Native American, they are the original owners of the...
No, you don't get what I said. What is the difference between the native? They just said native and still refer to them as American. It's just like, let's use our culture as an example. They said African and Native African. That's what I'm trying to say. Because if it is still, for me, I'm just suggesting by the name though, if it was Native American and American, the only difference there is the native. I want to know, like, what is it, like they are two different people
yes,
entirely, or...
But from what this little history I saw from social media, there are two different people. Like this person came
American
because they are the settlers that have been there.
Okay, the land is called American.
These people came like as to colonize.
We don't know if the land was called
America initially. Come to think of it,
that's what I'm asking.
America.
So if the land is called American and then those people are Native Americans, I don't know again where I'm coming from.
It's confusing now to think.
I think we have to research more on it and get clarity so that we don't mix history.
But if it's native and so why are they fighting each other?
I don't know if you're getting the point now.
Actually, they should be together fighting the British,
precisely,
not like fighting each other in the same environment.
short-lived, as the Battle of Lundy's Lane ended in a bloody stalemate shortly after, forcing the Americans to withdraw. The real deciding factor in the war came when Napoleon faced his first exile, allowing Britain to shift more focus to the discord with the United States. The British sliced through the US, destroying government buildings including the White House as they took control of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
The Brits then tried to push farther into Baltimore by September under the authority of General Robert Ross, but were repulsed at the Battle of North Point, where General Ross was killed. In the battle that inspired the U.S. national anthem, more British troops were fought off at Fort McHenry. As these conflicts raged on,
That is what I'm
peace
saying.
talks began in Ghent and eventually resulted in a signed treaty on December 24th, 1814. Still, just as with the declaration of war, the news was delayed and took until February 18th, 1815 to officially be ratified and end the war. The Treaty of Ghent reverted things back mostly to how they were before the combat, with a status quo antebellum. All territory was returned. Britain repealed their trade restrictions, stopped supporting the Native American revolts, and ended their impressment strategies. In the end, the war was essentially a draw, and the only real losing side was the Native Americans, who had high hopes for British help in stopping US expansion. Britain was able to claim
US
victory
expansion.
against the French, and in a way, against the US. Meanwhile, the US had the pride of more or less winning their second war of independence.
Shocking fact. You see, one of the reasons why I actually started reaction is because they open our minds to knowledge that we are not acquainted with. Because in all my life, I thought when the US and the United States, sorry, I said the US and the UK and the US, right? All my life, I felt like they just, as they were born, they became allies. To be frank, that's what I've always thought. If I didn't see this video today, I would still have that impression in me that there was never a time of war between the two countries. And this is not just an ordinary fight.
So really,
It was really
very-
intense, to the extent that they burned government houses. They took
over
control.
Washington, yeah.
It's not a small thing.
But actually, right, I think those dates of the war, I'm going to like check more about it. And I think I'm still having issue with the Native American and the American.
Yeah.
I think I need more clarity on that part. Who is truly the
Because me, I think the
owner
people I
of the
knew,
land?
the people I think I knew that was the Native American was this Native Indians. Is it Native Indians they call them?
Red Indians?
Is it Red Indians?
I think something like that.
So that's the old the people I've always thought about to be the native of the land. But hearing Native American and say hearing American is confusing. But in this video, the guy said Native American and the US. So he separated it by that name. The United States.
I feel like it was the name they called that land
Before.
American. Because Native American, they have their own language. They don't really speak
Speak English, yeah.
So they
They're
cannot
not English,
say
English.
American because they don't speak English. So I feel like they have their own name before
The whole
the whole thing.
Please help us down there in the comment section. We really appreciate it. But right now we are just
speculating.
speculating. Personally, I am blank, to be honest. Let us know what you think about this down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Love you guys. Bye.